The doorbell rang at exactly 8:02 a.m. and Karen Whitmore was ready for it. She'd been stationed by her front window since 7:30, watching for any sign of movement from the Matthews house. The sight of Sarah's golden retriever in the backyard had already ruined her morning. Despite the legal pressure, the woman was still flaunting her defiance. "Package for Karen Whitmore," the delivery driver announced, holding a small box wrapped in cheerful yellow paper. Karen frowned. She wasn't expecting anything. The return address read Woof and Wonder Pet Supplies, but she hadn't ordered anything from a pet store. She certainly didn't own any pets. "There must be some mistake," she said, but the driver was already walking back to his truck. Karen carried the box inside, her curiosity overriding her annoyance. She set it on her kitchen counter and carefully removed the wrapping paper. Inside was a small, realistic-looking dog toy, a golden retriever, ironically, with a note attached. "For someone who clearly loves the sound of barking. Hope this brings you joy. A friend." Karen's face darkened. This had to be Sarah's doing. She was about to throw the toy in the trash when it suddenly came to life. Woof! 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 The sound was so realistic, so loud, that Karen jumped backward, knocking over her coffee mug. The ceramic shattered on the floor, sending hot coffee splashing across her white kitchen tiles. "What the hell, Woof? Woof! Woof!" The toy barked again, its tail wagging mechanically. Karen grabbed it, searching for an off switch, but found none. She shook it, pressed various parts of its body, even tried to remove the batteries, but the compartment was sealed shut. Woof! 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 The barking continued, echoing through her pristine house. Karen's hands trembled with rage as she realized what was happening. Sarah Matthews had declared war. 20 minutes later, Karen marched across the yard separating their properties, the still barking toy clutched in her fist. She pounded on Sarah's front door with enough force to rattle the frame. "Open up," she shouted. "I know you're in there." Sarah opened the door, and Karen was struck by how composed she looked. Almost serene. As if she'd been expecting this confrontation. "Good morning, Karen," Sarah said pleasantly. "How are you today? Don't play innocent with me." Karen thrust the toy forward. "This is harassment. This is woof. Woof. Woof." The toy barked again, and Karen saw something flicker across Sarah's face. Satisfaction. The woman was actually enjoying this. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Sarah said, though her eyes were bright with amusement. "That's a cute toy, though. Very realistic. You sent this to me. Don't deny it." "I've been busy dealing with all the legal paperwork you've been sending my way," Sarah replied. "Speaking of which, I've hired a lawyer. We'll be contesting every single one of your complaints." Karen's grip tightened on the toy. "You can't win this, Sarah. I have documentation. Evidence. The law is on my side. We'll see about that." Sarah's smile was cold. "Have a wonderful day, Karen. And thanks for stopping by." The door closed in Karen's face and she stood there. For a moment, fury radiating through her body. The toy in her hand barked again, as if mocking her. Back in her house, Karen called the police. "I'd like to report harassment," she told the dispatcher. "My neighbor is sending me threatening packages." Officer Martinez arrived 30 minutes later, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and the patience of someone who'd mediated countless neighbor disputes. He examined the toy, listened to Karen's story, and made notes in his pad. "I understand you're frustrated," he said finally. "But unless you can prove your neighbor sent this, there's not much we can do. It's not illegal to receive gifts. It's not a gift. It's harassment. Is there a threatening message? Any explicit threats?" Karen read the note again. "For someone who clearly loves the sound of barking. Hope this brings you joy. A friend." The words were passive-aggressive, sure, but not technically threatening. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. My hands are tied. But I'll make a note of the incident in case there are future problems. After the officer left, Karen sat in her living room, staring at the toy. It had finally stopped barking, but she could see the small red light on its collar still blinking. Waiting. She tried everything, smashing it with a hammer, throwing it in the garbage disposal, even taking it to the electronics store to see if they could disable it. Nothing worked. The toy seemed indestructible. That evening, Karen drove to Sarah's workplace. She'd done her research. Sarah worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm downtown. Karen waited in the parking lot until she saw Sarah emerge from the building, then approached her. "This ends now," Karen said, her voice low and threatening. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends." Sarah paused beside her car, keys in hand. "I'm not playing any games, Karen. I'm just living my life. I know you sent that toy. Prove it." The simple challenge hung in the air between them. Karen realized she couldn't prove anything. The package had been sent anonymously, paid for with cash according to the delivery company. No paper trail, no evidence except her own certainty. "You're going to regret this," Karen said. "Are you threatening me?" Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes were alert. "Because if you are, I should probably record this conversation." Karen noticed the phone in Sarah's hand, its screen lit up and recording. She'd been outmaneuvered again. "Stay away from me," Karen said, backing toward her car. "And keep that animal of yours quiet." But as she drove home, Karen's mind was already racing. If Sarah wanted to play dirty, Karen would show her what dirty really looked like. She'd been the president of the Homeowners Association for 5 years, had connections throughout the city government, and wasn't afraid to use them. The next morning brought another delivery. This time, it was a larger box containing what appeared to be a realistic robotic puppy. The note read, "Since you love barking so much, here's a friend for your first gift. Your secret admirer." Karen didn't even open the box. She called the delivery company, demanding to know who had sent it. The customer service representative was polite but firm. The sender had requested anonymity and paid in cash. They couldn't provide any information. Woof. 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 The sound came from inside the unopened box. Somehow, the toy had activated on its own. Karen's hands shook as she carried the box to a garage. She couldn't destroy it, that would be destroying evidence. But she couldn't stand to have it in her house either. She set it on a workbench and closed the garage door, but she could still hear the muffled barking through the walls. By noon, 3 more packages had arrived. Each contained a different type of barking toy. Each came with a cheerful note. Each was impossible to turn off. Karen called in sick to work and spent the day researching revenge gift companies online. She found dozens of them, all promising anonymous delivery and untraceable payment methods. It was a whole industry she'd never known existed. That evening, she made a decision that would change everything. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to the Homeowners Association board, the city council, and everyone she knew in local government. If Sarah wanted to escalate this war, Karen would bring the full weight of bureaucracy down on her head. But first, she needed to document everything. Karen set up cameras around her property, programmed her phone to record every delivery, and began keeping a detailed log of every package that arrived. She also made one more call to her nephew Derek, who worked in cybersecurity. If Sarah thought she could hide behind anonymity, she was about to learn how wrong she was. As Karen fell asleep that night, the sound of barking echoed through her house from 6 different locations. She'd moved all the toys to the basement, but the sound seemed to seep through the floors, following her everywhere. In her dreams, she was surrounded by an army of golden retrievers, all barking in perfect unison, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. And standing behind them, smiling that same cold smile, was Sarah Matthews. Karen woke up screaming. The war had officially begun, and neither woman understood yet how completely it would consume them both. Tomorrow would bring new deliveries, new escalations, and the first sign that their private battle was about to become very public. End of Part 2. Day 7 of the barking toy siege found Karen Whitmore standing in her driveway at 7:45 a.m., waiting. She'd given up sleeping. The 17 toys now scattered throughout her house had created a symphony of chaos that no amount of white noise could mask. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands shaking from too much caffeine and too little rest. The delivery truck rounded the corner right on schedule. "Morning, Mrs. Whitmore," the driver called out cheerfully. His name was Marcus, and he'd become an unwitting participant in her daily torture. "Got 3 packages for you today." Karen didn't respond. She simply signed for the packages and carried them inside, adding them to the growing pile in her living room. Unopened. Untouched. Evidence. Her nephew Derek arrived at 8:30, laptop bag slung over his shoulder. At 28, he was everything Karen wished she could be: calm, methodical, unflappable. He'd inherited his grandmother's analytical mind and none of Karen's emotional volatility. "Aunt Karen, you look terrible," he said, setting up his equipment on her kitchen table. "I haven't slept in 3 days." Karen's voice was hoarse. "She's trying to drive me insane." Woof. 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 The barking erupted from multiple directions, a cacophony that made Derek wince. He'd been working on tracing the source of the packages for 2 days, but whoever was behind this had covered their tracks well. "I've got something," Derek said, opening his laptop. "It's not much, but it's a start." He pulled up a series of screenshots: payment records, shipping manifests, digital breadcrumbs that only someone with his expertise could follow. The payments are all made through cryptocurrency, then converted to cash cards. But there's a pattern in the timing. Whoever is doing this places orders at the same time each day, 11:47 p.m. And they are all coming from the same IP address. Karen leaned closer. "Can you trace it?" "I already did. The orders are being placed from the Starbucks on 5th Street. But here's the interesting part: I cross-referenced the timing with the store's Wi-Fi logs. The same device connects to their network every night at 11:45, places an order, then disconnects." Sarah: "Maybe. But we need proof. Real proof." Derek pulled up another screen. "I've been monitoring social media, local forums, anything that might give us insight into her behavior. Look at this." He showed Karen a post from a neighborhood Facebook group. Sarah had shared a photo of Max playing in the backyard, with the caption, "Some dogs bark because they are happy. Some neighbors complain because they are miserable. Guess which one makes for a better life?" The post had 37 likes and a dozen supportive comments. Karen recognized several names, neighbors who'd apparently chosen sides in a war she hadn't realized was public. "She's turning everyone against me," Karen whispered. "There's more." Derek scrolled through more posts. "She's been documenting everything. Every legal notice you've sent, every complaint, every interaction. She's painting you as the neighborhood villain." Karen stared at the screen, watching her reputation crumble in real time. Comments ranged from supportive to sympathetic to openly mocking. One particularly cruel post compared her to a crazy cat lady, but for noise complaints. "I need to respond," Karen said, reaching for Derek's laptop. "No." Derek closed the screen. "That's exactly what she wants. The more you engage, the more ammunition you give her. We need to be smarter than this." But Karen was already past smart. She was past rational. 7 days of constant barking had stripped away her usual calculated approach, leaving behind something raw and desperate. That afternoon, while Derek continued his digital investigation, Karen made a decision that would haunt her for months to come. She called her friend Rebecca, who worked in the city's animal control department. "I need a favor," Karen said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "That dog next door, I need it gone. Today." "Karen, you know I can't just, I have recordings, witness statements, documentation going back months. Surely that's enough for an emergency removal." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "What's really going on? You sounded different." "I'm tired, Rebecca. I'm tired of being the only one who cares about maintaining standards in this neighborhood. I'm tired of dealing with people who think rules don't apply to them. I'll see what I can do." 2 hours later, a city animal control truck pulled up to Sarah's house. Karen watched from her window as 2 officers approached Sarah's front door, official paperwork in hand. She felt a surge of satisfaction, the first positive emotion she'd experienced in days, but the satisfaction was short-lived. Sarah emerged from her house with Max on a leash, but instead of surrendering him, she was accompanied by a man in an expensive suit. Karen recognized him from the legal documents, Sarah's lawyer. The conversation on Sarah's front porch was brief but intense. Karen couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. The animal control officers were being outmaneuvered. Their authority challenged by someone who knew the system better than they did. After 20 minutes, the truck drove away. Empty. Karen's phone rang 5 minutes later. "It's Rebecca." "I'm sorry, Karen." Her lawyer had injunctions. Counter-documentation. They were prepared for this. "What do you mean, prepared?" "I mean they knew we were coming. Someone tipped them off." Karen's blood ran cold. Only 3 people had known about her call to animal control: herself, Rebecca, and Derek. And Derek had been in her house the entire time. "Rebecca, I need you to tell me the truth. Is there any way my phone could be monitored?" "Karen, you're starting to sound paranoid." But Karen was already hanging up, her mind racing. She found Derek in her living room, his laptop open, various programs running on the screen. "Derek, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He looked up from his screen, his expression carefully neutral. "What's wrong? How did Sarah know about the animal control visit?" Derek's fingers paused over his keyboard. "I have no idea. Maybe she has connections in the city government. Or maybe someone told her." "Aunt Karen, what are you suggesting?" Karen stared at her nephew, seeing him with new eyes. The way he'd insisted on setting up his equipment. The way he'd discouraged her from responding to Sarah's social media posts. The way he'd been so eager to help, so available, so convenient. "Show me your screen," she said quietly. "What?" "Your laptop. Show me what you're working on." Derek hesitated for just a moment too long. "It's technical stuff. You wouldn't understand. Try me." The standoff lasted 30 seconds before Derek sighed and turned his laptop toward her. The screen showed a complex web of programs, but Karen's attention was drawn to one particular window, a chat application with several ongoing conversations. One of them was with someone named S_Matthews_design. "You son of a bitch," Karen whispered. "Aunt Karen, I can explain. You've been feeding her information. This whole time, you've been working with her." Derek closed his laptop and stood up. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "It's what's best for everyone." Derek's voice was calm, professional. "This vendetta of yours has gone too far. You're destroying yourself, and you're dragging the whole family into it." "The family?" Karen's voice rose. "What family? You're the only family I have left, and you've betrayed me. I'm trying to help. You. Sarah isn't the enemy here. She's just a woman with a dog who wants to be left alone. She's been torturing me for a week. Because you tried to take away the only thing that matters to her." Derek's composure finally cracked. "Do you have any idea what that woman has been through? Her divorce, her mother's death, losing her job. That dog is all she has left, and you want to destroy it because it makes noise." Karen stared at her nephew, seeing the truth in his eyes. "How long have you known her?" "We met at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago. She was crying, and I asked if she was okay. She told me about her neighbor from hell who was trying to steal her dog." "Neighbor from hell? That's what she called you. And after spending a week in this house, watching what you've become, I'm starting to think she was right." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. She looked around her living room, at the pile of unopened packages, the recording equipment, the legal documents scattered across every surface. The chaos that had become her life. "Get out," she said quietly. "Aunt Karen, get out." Her voice echoed through the house, competing with the barking toys. "Get out of my house, and don't ever come back." Derek packed his equipment in silence. At the door, he turned back one more time. She's going to stop, he said. The toys, the deliveries, all of it. She never wanted this to go this far. Why should I believe you? Because unlike you, she's not a monster. After Derek left, Karen sat in her silent house, silent except for the 17 barking toys that continued their mechanical symphony. She'd lost her nephew, her reputation, her standing in the neighborhood. All because of a dog that barked, but as she sat there, surrounded by the evidence of her own obsession, Karen began to realize something that terrified her more than any barking toy ever could. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe she was the monster. The thought should have brought her some peace, some path toward resolution. Instead, it filled her with a rage so pure, so consuming, that she knew there could be no going back. If she was the monster, then she would embrace it completely. Tomorrow, she would show Sarah Matthews what a real monster looked like. Karen Whitmore stood in her kitchen at 3:17 a.m., staring at the collection of evidence she'd assembled over the past 8 hours. Phone records. Social media screenshots. Derek's laptop history, which she'd retrieved from his car using the spare key he'd forgotten to return. Financial records she'd accessed through family accounts. And most damning of all, the encrypted chat logs between her nephew and Sarah Matthews that painted a picture of manipulation so sophisticated it took her breath away. The barking toys had finally run out of battery power, leaving her house eerily quiet for the first time in over a week. But the silence wasn't peaceful, it was the silence before a storm. Karen had discovered the truth about Sarah Matthews. The real truth. She pulled up the employment records Derek had carelessly left accessible. Sarah hadn't lost her job, she'd been fired for corporate espionage, selling client lists to competitors. The divorce wasn't an amicable split, her husband had filed a restraining order after she'd destroyed his car and threatened his new girlfriend. And her mother hadn't died of natural causes, she'd committed suicide after Sarah had systematically drained her bank accounts to fund a gambling addiction. Sarah Matthews wasn't a grieving victim. She was a predator who'd turned manipulating people into an art form. You want to play games? Karen whispered to the empty house. Let's play games. She opened her laptop and began typing. If Sarah thought she could orchestrate Karen's destruction while hiding behind a carefully crafted victim narrative, she was about to learn that too could play at manipulation. The first email went to Sarah's employer, complete with documentation of the revenge gift campaign and evidence of her use of company resources for personal vendettas. The second went to her ex-husband's lawyer, revealing Sarah's current address and her pattern of harassing neighbors. The third went to the IRS, questioning how someone claiming financial hardship could afford to send hundreds of dollars worth of gifts daily. But those were just the opening moves. Karen had spent 5 years as president of the Homeowners Association, building relationships with city council members, county supervisors, and state representatives. She donated to campaigns, attended fundraisers, and cultivated influence. Now it was time to cash in those chips. By 6 a.m., Karen had made 17 phone calls. Each conversation was carefully crafted, emphasizing her concern for neighborhood safety and the disturbing pattern of escalating harassment she'd uncovered. She didn't mention the barking toys, instead, she focused on Sarah's criminal history, her financial fraud, and the coordinated campaign of psychological warfare. I'm genuinely concerned about what this woman might do next, Karen told Councilman Bradley, her voice perfectly calibrated to convey worry rather than anger. The documentation suggests someone with serious psychological issues who's willing to engage in sustained harassment campaigns. The response was immediate and gratifying. By 8 a.m., Sarah's house was under surveillance. By 9 a.m., her employer had suspended her pending investigation. By 10 a.m., Child Protective Services had opened a case file based on anonymous concerns about her mental stability. Karen watched from her window as Sarah's carefully constructed life began to crumble. The woman who'd thought she could destroy Karen's reputation was about to learn what real destruction looked like. The doorbell rang at 11:30 a.m. Karen opened the door to find Sarah standing on her porch, but this wasn't the composed, confident woman who'd been orchestrating the toy campaign. This Sarah was disheveled, her eyes red from crying, her hands shaking with barely controlled rage. "You evil bitch," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I've done what needed to be done, Karen replied calmly. I've protected this neighborhood from someone who's clearly unstable. They took Max, Sarah's voice broke completely. Animal control came with a court order. They said I was mentally unfit to care for him. Karen felt a surge of satisfaction. So intense it was almost sexual. That's unfortunate. But perhaps it's for the best. You clearly weren't providing adequate care. Sarah's fist connected with Karen's jaw before she could finish the sentence. The impact sent Karen stumbling backward, tasting blood. But instead of fear, she felt exhilaration. Finally, the mask was off. Finally, Sarah was showing her true nature. That was assault, Karen said, wiping blood from her lip. Witnessed by my security cameras. Sarah's face went white as she realized what she'd done. Karen, you just proved everything I've been saying about you. Violent. Unstable. Dangerous. Karen smiled, the expression made grotesque by the blood on her teeth. The police should be very interested in this footage. Please, Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Don't. I need my dog back. He's all I have left. You should have thought of that before you decided to torture me with those ridiculous toys. I'll stop. I'll call off the deliveries. I'll do whatever you want. Karen stuttered her broken neighbor, feeling the intoxicating rush of absolute power. This was what victory felt like. This was what Sarah had taken from her: dignity, control, the ability to feel superior to someone. It's too late for that, Karen said. You wanted to play psychological games. You wanted to manipulate and control. Well, congratulations. You've created a monster. Sarah took a step back, something in Karen's tone finally penetrating her desperation. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not stopping until you're gone. Not just from this neighborhood, from this city. I'm going to destroy everything you have left, just like you tried to destroy me. I never tried to destroy you. I just wanted you to leave me alone. You coordinated with my nephew to humiliate me. You documented my every move on social media. You turned my own family against me. Karen's voice rose with each word. You made me look like a fool in front of the entire neighborhood. Because you were trying to steal my dog. Because you couldn't follow simple rules. The two women stood facing each other, years of accumulated resentment and fresh wounds creating a toxic atmosphere that seemed to crackle with electricity. Karen could see the moment when Sarah's desperation transformed into something harder, more dangerous. You know what? Sarah said, her voice suddenly steady. You're right. I did try to humiliate you. I did coordinate with Derek. I did document everything. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't investigate your finances. I didn't dig into your employment history. I didn't contact your family members. Karen felt the first flutter of unease. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you've been embezzling money from the Homeowners Association for 3 years. I'm talking about the fact that you've been using your position to manipulate property values for your own benefit. I'm talking about the fact that your ex-husband didn't just divorce you, he fled the state to get away from you. The blood drained from Karen's face. You're bluffing. Am I? Because I've got bank records, Karen. I've got emails. I've got testimony from contractors who've been overcharging the association and kicking back money to you. Sarah pulled out her phone. I've got everything. You're lying. The same way you lied about my employment history. The same way you lied about my mother's death. The same way you lied about my divorce. Sarah's smile was cold and terrible. You see, Karen, you're not the only one who can make phone calls. You're not the only one with connections. And you're definitely not the only one who can play dirty. Karen stared at her neighbor, understanding for the first time that she'd been outmaneuvered from the very beginning. The barking toys hadn't been random harassment, they'd been a distraction, a way to keep Karen focused on the wrong battle while Sarah gathered ammunition for the real war. What do you want? Karen asked quietly. I want my dog back. I want The harassment to stop. And I want you to stay away from me, my property, and my life. And if I don't? Sarah held up her phone. Then tomorrow morning, every person you've ever tried to impress is going to learn exactly what kind of person you really are. Your church friends. Your book club. Your former co-workers. Everyone. Karen felt the walls closing in around her. She'd thought she was the predator, but she'd been the prey all along. Sarah had used her own methods against her, turned her weapons back on her, and now held her entire reputation in her hands. You planned this, Karen said, her voice filled with horrified admiration. All of it. The toys, Derek, everything. I planned to defend myself, Sarah corrected. You declared war on me, Karen. I just chose to fight back. I could still release what I have on you. Mutual destruction. Is that really what you want? Sarah's voice was almost gentle. Because I've got nothing left to lose. My job, my reputation, my dog, you've already taken everything that mattered to me. But you? You still have your house, your position, your carefully constructed life. The question is, are you willing to lose all of that just to hurt me? Karen looked at her neighbor, really looked at her for the first time. She saw the exhaustion, the grief, the desperate love for an animal that had been ripped away from her. But she also saw something else, a woman who'd been pushed too far and had chosen to push back with everything she had. I want my dog back. Sarah repeated. That's all I've ever wanted. Karen nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. Today. Today. Sarah turned to leave, then paused. Karen. The next time you decide to go to war with someone, maybe make S. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:47 a.m., and Sarah Matthews knew her life was about to change forever. Through the peephole, she saw Karen Whitmore clutching a stack of legal papers, her face twisted with the kind of righteous fury that had terrorized the neighborhood for years. Behind Karen stood two uniformed officers, their expressions grim. This is about your dog, Karen announced, her voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. And this time, I'm not backing down. But what Karen didn't know was that Sarah had already set in motion a plan so diabolically perfect, so beautifully twisted, that by the time the last barking toy arrived at Karen's doorstep, the entire neighborhood, the morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Street as Sarah Matthews stepped onto her front porch, coffee mug in hand. The suburban paradise she'd moved to 3 years ago had become a battlefield, and she was losing. Woof! 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 Max, her golden retriever, bounded across the backyard, his tail wagging as he chased a squirrel up the oak tree. Sarah smiled despite herself. At 2 years old, Max was everything she'd hoped for in a companion, loyal, playful, and blissfully unaware that his existence had become the source of World War III on their quiet street. Sarah Matthews. The voice cut through the morning air like a rusty knife. Sarah's stomach clenched as she turned to see Karen Whitmore marching across the perfectly manicured lawn that separated their properties. Karen's steel-grey hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her lips were pressed into a thin line that Sarah had come to recognize as her neighbor's default expression. Karen. Sarah kept her voice level, though her grip tightened on her coffee mug. Good morning. There's nothing good about it. Karen planted herself at the property line, her arms crossed over her chest. That animal of yours has been barking since 5:30 this morning. 5:30, Sarah. Some of us have jobs. Sarah glanced at her watch. 7:15 a.m. Karen, I was asleep until 6:45. Max was inside with me. Don't lie to me. Karen's voice rose an octave. I heard him. I recorded it. She waved her iPhone in the air like a weapon. 17 separate barking episodes between 5:30 and 7 a.m. 17. Maybe it was another dog, it was your dog. Karen stepped closer, her face flushed with anger. And I'm sick of your excuses. This has been going on for months. Months, Sarah. My property value is plummeting because of that menace. Sarah felt heat rising in her chest. Max wasn't perfect, but he was a good dog. He barked when strangers approached, sure, but that was normal. Natural. The real problem was Karen's obsession with controlling everything and everyone around her. "I've tried to be reasonable," Sarah said, setting down her coffee cup. "I've adjusted his feeding schedule, moved his sleeping area, even hired a trainer. But Max is a dog, Karen. Dogs bark. Not in my neighborhood they don't." Karen's eyes glittered with malice. "I've spoken to the Homeowners Association. I've contacted Animal Control. I've documented everything." She pulled out a thick folder from her purse. "Every bark, every time, every decibel level. I have recordings, photographs, witness statements from other neighbors." Sarah's heart sank. She'd known Karen was documenting Max's behavior, but she hadn't realized the scope of her neighbor's campaign. "What do you want?" Sarah asked quietly. "I want that animal gone. Permanently." Karen's smile was cold. "And if you won't do it voluntarily, I'll make sure it happens through legal channels. You can't just watch me." Karen turned and walked back toward her house, her heels clicking against the pavement. "You have until the end of the week to find that dog a new home. If you don't, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the city, and I guarantee you won't like the outcome." Sarah watched her neighbor disappear into her house, feeling a mixture of rage and helplessness wash over her. Max had been her companion through the worst period of her life. After her divorce, after losing her job, after her mother's death, Max had been the constant, the source of unconditional love that had kept her going. "Come here, boy," she called softly. Max trotted over, his tail wagging, completely oblivious to the fact that his very existence had just been threatened. Sarah scratched behind his ears, and he leaned into her touch, his brown eyes full of trust and affection. "I'm not giving you up," she whispered. "I don't care what that woman thinks she can do." But as the day wore on, Sarah began to realize that Karen's threat wasn't empty posturing. At 2 p.m., a city inspector arrived to measure noise levels. At 4 p.m., a representative from the Homeowners Association knocked on her door with a formal complaint letter. By 6 p.m., she'd received 3 separate citations from Animal Control. Karen had been busy. That evening, Sarah sat in her living room, staring at the pile of legal documents spread across her coffee table. Max lay beside her, his head resting on her lap, sensing her distress. She'd called 2 lawyers, but both had given her the same advice: comply with the complaints or face escalating legal action. "This isn't over," she said aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. She opened her laptop and began to search. If Karen wanted to play hardball, Sarah would give her exactly what she was asking for. But not in the way her neighbor expected. The website appeared after her 5th search, Revenge Gifts Anonymous, when words aren't enough. Sarah clicked through the catalog, her eyes widening as she read the descriptions. Fake parking tickets. Glitter bombs. Subscription services for embarrassing magazines. And then she found it. The Barking Bandit, a realistic electronic dog toy that barks every 30 seconds for 8 hours straight. Battery-powered, weatherproof, and comes with a timer function. Perfect for those who appreciate the authentic sounds of man's best friend. Sarah stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the Add to Cart button. It was petty. Juvenile. Completely beneath her usual standards of behavior. She clicked buy now. But one toy wasn't enough. If Karen wanted to document barking, Sarah would give her something worth documenting. She ordered 5 more toys, each programmed to activate at different times throughout the day. Then she found the subscription service. Daily delivery, recurring. Gifts sent to your target's address for up to 365 days. Choose your frequency and let us handle the rest. Sarah's hands trembled as she filled out the form. Karen's address. Daily delivery. Starting tomorrow. The confirmation email arrived at 11:47 p.m. Your order has been processed. Delivery begins at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for choosing Revenge Gifts Anonymous. Sarah closed her laptop and looked down at Max, who was sleeping peacefully beside her. Tomorrow, she whispered, we fight back. She had no idea that her simple act of retaliation would set in motion a chain of events that would consume both their lives, divide the neighborhood, and ultimately reveal truths about both women that neither was prepared to face. The first barking toy would arrive at Karen's doorstep in less than 9 hours, and with it, a war that would escalate far beyond anything either woman could have imagined. End of part 1.